extremely big rumor. OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT, run by Sam Altman, are laying the groundwork for an IPO, an initial public offering, meaning they'll take their company from being privately owned to publicly owned and tradable on the stock market. This is still a rumor, but it's coming from sources within OpenAI. Apparently, they're eyeing an IPO at a $1 trillion valuation, which might be the largest IPO ever. Let's check that though. Pretty sure that's going to be it. Oh no, I'm very wrong on that. There have been several much larger ones, including finance companies, mainly in Saudi Arabia. I'm kind of surprised about that. So San Francisco, OpenAI is laying the groundwork for an initial public offering that will value the company at $1 trillion. Yes, it is the largest by a huge amount. A valuation of $1 trillion. 3 people familiar with the matter said that could be one of the biggest IPOs of all time. I do apologize. I should know better by now because we're dealing in the trillions now with AI. OpenAI is considering filing with securities regulators as soon as the second half as 2026, about 1 year from now. Some of the people said in preliminary discussions, the company had looked at raising 60 billion at the low end and likely more, people said. They cautioned that talks are early and plans, including the figures and timings, could change depending on business growth and market conditions. If this is true, it's going to be one of the largest, if not the largest IPO of all time. I imagine people who get in early on this are going to make a huge amount of money. So there'll be lots of people asking how to get in and how to get early access to this deal. But we still have about a year to go. Chief Financial Officer Sarah Fryer has told some associates the company is aiming for a 2027 listing, but some advisors predict it could be even sooner, around late 2026. An IPO is not our focus, so we could not possibly have set a date, the OpenAI spokesman said. We're building a durable business and advancing our mission so everyone benefits from AGI. So remember that at the beginning of this week, we found out that OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT, had finalized moving from a non-profit organization to a for-profit organization. This has allowed them to raise more money, to put more money into GPUs, into training, into running the company. So they are constantly bringing in more and more cash. That was limited by being a non-profit because it's hard to get the profits and the fruits of your labor back to the investors. Basically, this seems to be the next step. An IPO will allow many more people to invest publicly in ChatGPT. And that first IPO, they're aiming at 60 billion as a raise. This is all to allow them to continue to pump money into the development of OpenAI and their models, and to hopefully get to AGI. It's also about making money. There's no two ways around that. We can be cynical about this, but I think there are good reasons, which are they need additional cash to keep going. This does raise the question of, is it possible just to spend your way to AGI, or do we need something different? At the moment, it's just about throwing a huge amount of cash at it, making sure you have enough GPUs, enough electricity, enough training power, and then also adding on bits of architecture, continuing to research. But the majority of that cash is just being thrown into training right now. Whether or not that takes us to AGI, we do not know, but that is the big bet. But this is also a company that's not really making a profit yet. So with annualized revenue rate expected to reach 20 billion by year end, losses are also mounting inside the company, people said. During a live stream on Tuesday, Altman addressed the possibility of going public. I think it's fair to say it's the most likely path for us, given the capital needs that we have, i.e. we need more cash. IPO preparations following major restructuring. It started out as a non-profit in 2015. A few years ago, the company overhauled its structure so that the non-profit would have oversight and control over the for-profit arm. I showed a diagram on Tuesday or Wednesday, which showed the non-profit and the for-profit, and they are connected. The main goal of the non-profit was to ensure that OpenAI developed AI technology safely, rather than prioritizing profits like a traditional company. This week, OpenAI revamped itself. It is still controlled by a non-profit, now called the OpenAI Foundation, but the non-profit has a 26% stake in OpenAI Group and a warrant to receive additional shares if the company hits certain milestones. So a warrant is optional. It does not necessarily trigger, but they are allowed to receive those additional shares if they hit additional milestones. This change makes a non-profit a significant stakeholder in OpenAI's financial success. So they now have a non-profit that owns 26%, it has a 26% stake plus warrants for more of the for-profit version. But it's the for-profit company that will be getting the investment and the IPO. You take your for-profit company public because it seems obvious. You do it with the for-profit company because you have an uncapped profit potential there. We may have an OpenAI initial public offering within the next couple of years, and it looks like the largest IPO of all time, which is very exciting. It will also fuel a narrative that we have a bubble, a financial bubble, which is interestingly, I was reading an article by Nate B. Jones today, and he was talking about the bubble is the real bubble. So it's become almost trendy to push the narrative that we have an AI bubble. And we need to remember there's a difference between a financial bubble and a technological bubble. With a technology bubble, we've seen this before with Web3. It's probably the most recent crypto technologies, NFTs. NFTs are a great example here, where people get in behind the technology, say that this is going to change the world, revolutionize everything, and then the technology itself doesn't deliver. It doesn't find a use case. It doesn't find a general public market. NFTs are a good example of that, where the technology itself is a bubble and connected to a financial bubble. I would argue that with artificial intelligence, generative AI, our modern AI, that is not the case because we are using AI on a daily basis. It has a huge adoption rate. I think ChatGPT alone is about 10% of humanity. It means it's useful. That's the reason people are using it. And that is very different to a financial bubble because the internet, we had a financial bubble and a financial crash. But out the back of the dot-com bubble and boom, we had the internet. So I think that's probably more likely what's going to happen here. We might have a financial correction. It might be a big financial correction, but the technology itself is extremely good.